the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:39 is the time. Let's get straight to our next guest to talk about one Gary Lineker. Gary Lineker, no more at the BBC. Sunday is last match of the day. He is not going to be presenting the World Cup coverage for the BBC next year. A massive shock after, well, just the latest social media faux pas from Gary Lineker. But did he finally go too far for the BBC when he posted a really foul, nasty, ill-informed, clearly anti-Semitic video featuring the anti-Semitic trope of, well, basically referring to Israelis with a rat emoji? Even he obviously realised he'd gone too far and, well, I imagine was forced to apologise and delete the post on Instagram. But now it's been announced that, well, it's going to be formally announced today, but we understand will be announced that he is going to go much sooner than expected. Let's talk about this with Philip Kiszely. He's a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Very good morning to you.
Hi, Julia. It's lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you. Was it inevitable that he'd have to go, whether it was sooner or later?
Yes, I think so. But I mean, I was just thinking how quickly times change. I mean, when I think about the BBC, I always associate it with paedophiles, with
that's nice.
Jimmy Savile, Hugh Edwards, Gary Glitter, all of that kind of thing. Now I associate the face of the BBC, which is Gary Lineker, we have to say, don't we, with gross anti-Semitism. Now, if you are comparing Israelis or Zionists to rats, and you work the national broadcaster, we have a problem because you are grossly anti-Semitic. Now he's issued this apology, hasn't he, Julia? Which
he says he would never have, knowingly issued this post. But it wasn't the first post.
No,
there are quite a lot of other things he's posted that are, I would say, over the line.
No, so yeah, my point is, right, so he's issued an apology and he's saying, I didn't realise it was anti-Semitic. I didn't realise it was connected with the Third Reich. Well, if you don't realise those very basic things of anti-Semitic history, then you should not be weighing into this argument at all.
And that's the key thing, because, I mean, he doesn't, one of the things he said in a recent interview with Alma Rajan of the BBC was that, he thought the BBC wanted him to go, but said, you need to speak out on these issues because this war is being played out live for us and we're seeing it. How can anyone not speak out? And not speak out means you're almost complicit, he said. But the reality is he doesn't realise that what we're seeing on our TV screens and on social media is all Hamas propaganda. Yes, children are dying, civilians are dying in Gaza, as they do in every single war. And the reason why civilians are dying is because Hamas is deliberately using them as human shields, and not just doesn't mind them dying, actively, as part of their war policy, wants children to die so they can use them as propaganda as part of their cause. He's being used. Gary Lineker has just simply been a useful idiot for Hamas. That is the reality. He's been a useful idiot for Hamas, as have many other celebrities and others who have supported Gary Lineker. And I don't want the man to shut up. I want to know. If someone thinks this stuff, I would like to know it. However, if you've got a BBC contract, and I know everything got redrawn, the contracts and the rules got redrawn for his benefit, but actually everyone else at the BBC gets the deal. You don't get to give your personal political views if you're a senior figure at the BBC, whether you're the political editor, the news editor, or you're just a star related to the BBC. You have to keep stum, or don't work at the BBC. And he seemed to think that he was bigger than everyone else.
Yeah, I think, well, he's apologised, but it's an insincere apology. He desperately knew what he was doing. Of course he did. You'd have to be absolutely monumentally stupid.
No, I genuinely think he's actually, I think he's down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole, as a lot of perfectly nice, good people are, where they genuinely think that this war is unique in its cruelty and barbarity, and they have no context of the fact that actually the Israeli soldiers, the Israeli government, actually, yes, children and civilians die, but actually in terms of the number of casualties that are civilian compared to combatants, it is minimal, and nothing that the British or the American or any other Western army has ever achieved in any war ever.
Yeah, I get that, but he did share an image of a rat and likened it to Jews. So I think that's one thing. But I don't think it's just about Gary Lineker, Julia. Okay, I think it's a systemic problem. I think it's a product of a culture. It's no mistake that the BBC were massively biased against Israel. It's no mistake that they just take Hamas's statistics as read and just push them out. It's no mistake that they produced a document documentary and had a Hamas official's son narrating the damn. It's much, much more than Gary Lineker. Gary Lineker is the silly, chattering class face of this gross anti-Semitism, which is systemic. And it's not just about the BBC. It filters into the institutions. It's part of the hard left long march, which is massively anti-Semitic. You have to root it out. Now, I would say to people watching this, if you are appalled by this, as you should be, and I repeat, it's not just Gary Lineker. He's just the useful idiot. It is the culture at the BBC, and you must not pay your license.
Right, I can't endorse that, because I can't. At this show, we cannot endorse people not paying the law.
I don't expect you to, but I can say that as a commentator, because I'm responding to gross anti-Semitism, and as I say, it's detailed, it's systemic. It's all.
I agree with you. Even just down to refusing to call Hamas a terror organisation, which they clearly are. It is quite extraordinary. I do wonder, and there's genuineness, that I think that Gary Lineker's worst sin for the BBC wasn't all these posts, wasn't breaching contracts and all of that, and the arrogance. I think it was that he criticised in the same interview that he made this point about being complicit if you don't speak out on these things. He criticised the new BBC sports coverage chief, Alex K. Jelski, for saying he had no TV experience. I genuinely think that was probably the last straw for them, rather than the anti-Semitism.
I think so, because that just feeds into what I've just said, doesn't it? It's about them, it's about their image, and it's about their image with a particular group of people. And this is the chattering class, urban, university-educated, absolute minority. They do not represent the British people.
And we know that. We know that from the public vote at Eurovision, where the 12 points atop the public vote went to the Israeli entry, of course, a survivor of the Nova Festival massacre. And again, the coverage. I mean, I'm a big fan of Graham Norton, but mate, you got it very wrong, the way he was talking about that case. I'd love to talk to you for longer, but we're going to have to take a break. Actually, we're going to touch on some of this with Natasha Hausdorff, who's the legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel, up next. But Philip Kiszely, senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, thank you so much for joining us. Sam Armstrong, he's very, very clear of this, but I do think the thing that basically has seen the end of Gary Lineker's career at the BBC is more him criticising the new boss than any anti-Semitic post. I really do think
and I think the fact you've got to work into it, of course, is Gary Lineker set up this podcast company, Goalhanger, which is a phenomenally profitable company. He's now making so much money not at the BBC, not from being out in front of the camera. I actually think he's happy just to say walk away at the end of it. The real shame is that if he'd walked away a couple of years ago, he would have done far less damage to the institution that made him the star he is. Because
also, when you're that senior figure at the BBC and you're posting this stuff and saying this stuff, you legitimise what he's been saying. And he says, you're complicit if you don't speak out. Well, then you must be complicit in the 7th of October massacre, Gary Lineker, because you didn't post anything about that. You've not posted anything about that all this time. Not posted anything about Sudan, not posted anything about the Uyghur people in China. Not posted anything about any of the other awful, but just because. So he is complicit in everything by his own logic. He must be complicit in the murder of children. But if babies, children, women, other civilians, if they get killed in those wars, that's not an issue for him. But he's just upset about the ones in Gaza.
There is something about these guys, Julia. There's a certain type of people there.
What's different? If you could get in touch and help us, that'd be great.